You are listening to the Spent the Rent podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
Hello, I am Patty Rose, and welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. This is being recorded on March 8th, 2028. Today is my birthday. I am 3012 today. It is my 12th annual 30th birthday podcast. After the show, if you'd like to donate, you can go to strpod.com. That's strpod.com. There's a bunch of links to PayPal, Venmo, all kinds of ways to buy me a cup of coffee. Before we get started, I have two announcements. This Saturday, March 9th, tomorrow, there's a benefit concert. I got a flyer for it. There's a benefit concert at the Big Dirty. This is for Kenny Wilson. This is a benefit show. We recently found out Kenny is dealing with cancer, and he's a homie. He's one of the deep-seated hip-hop artists in Eugene, Oregon. And so if you look at the set list, it's pretty incredible. Ender One, Mac Dub, DZO, Michael K, KI Design, Core One, Cerebral Cortex, Canu, Sammy Warmhands, Gradient, ADHD, DJ Smooth. It's going to be an insane night of some of the legends in Eugene hip hop. So if you're interested, March 9th, that's this Saturday at the Big Dirty, downtown Eugene. Benefit for Kenny Wilson. Shout out to Kenny Wilson. Second thing, soon after I sat down last episode, or the episode before the last, with Doug Barr, it was brought to light some really serious charges from his past that included some targeted hate crimes. The Spent the Rent podcast is a strong ally to the LGBT community and strongly is against violence of any kind, especially when it is targeted at marginalized groups or individuals. I did not know about that before speaking with him. I will, however, say I do believe that people can change. I believe we all have grown since 1984. I'll just say that. It also has been brought to my attention that Douglas Barr is dealing with some pretty serious health issues, and I read today that he has officially withdrawn from the race altogether. So this is a two-way race for Eugene mayor. If either candidate receives over 50% of the vote in May, there will be a runoff in November. So your vote is significant. You can listen to my interview with candidate Karin Knudsen on my website, strpod.com. And I want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Oregon Cashflow Pro and Subdermal Art Collective. And then I'm going to bring on my guest. That was a mouthful. Thank you for all that. Let me bring on my guest. So my guest today is the other candidate now, and it's a two-way race for Eugene Mayor, Shanaé Joyce Stringer. Shanaé, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this is really cool. First of all, thank you for joining the podcast. It's a tremendous honor to hear from individuals who step up to fight for change in our community. Eugene Mayor is an obstacle that I don't know why you're doing it. Before I get too off track, I just want to say on your website, which is shanaeforeugene.org, is that correct?
.com.
So shanaeforeugene.com, and it'll be in the show notes. And your campaign slogan on your website is moving Eugene forward together. Can we start off with you explaining what that means to you?
Yes. And again, thank you for this opportunity to speak to your audience and the residents that live in Eugene. So thinking about that model and what that means to me, moving Eugene forward together with emphasis on together really reflects my desire to work hand in hand with community members, the young at heart, business owners, nonprofit organizers, the city employees, elected officials, everyone to bring about the necessary changes that are needed to ensure that our city and its residents have a secure future. I believe that Eugene has the ability to be really a model for other cities in Oregon and even nationally on issues like mental health, environmental justice, and even housing. And how we go about as a community requires forward thinking and forward movement. Eugene has definitely shown some progress in these areas, but to truly tackle the challenges that are actually facing a vast majority of the residents in our city, those who are experiencing substance use disorders, those that are experiencing unhousedness, even our youth, really requires a collective approach, and that would involve like all sectors of our community. I'm talking about social services, those who are healthcare providers, those in the educational institutions, those who work for the city, our various city departments, and even intergovernmentally. I think it requires deepening some of those current collaborations and even establish some new partnerships to truly tackle some of the challenges and really meet the needs that exist for our city.
Yeah, the role of mayor takes delegation. Is it really, and it takes leadership, and it takes, it's gonna take getting volunteers because there's not a lot of money, but it's gonna take getting a lot of people that want to be, join, a good mission. And so yeah, that's cool. Eugene has its issues. There's no secret, no more challenging than affordable housing and of finding and sustaining livable wage jobs. What are some ways that you as mayor could help in those areas?
Um, Definitely love to speak to that. So some people may or may not know I'm a renter in the city. So I am highly impacted by what happens when it comes to housing in the city. And I believe that having a safe place to sleep is essential to help our community members find stability and just remain active members in the community. I want to pause and just reflect on a study that was published in January by Harvard University that really tackled unaffordable housing. And what it was reflecting was Oregon is one of 6 states in the nation with the most cost burden renters. According to that study, there's several factors, right, that compound cost burden among renters, which includes a dwindling supply of low rent units and decade long issues of rent increases outpacing income gains. I mean, so essentially saying that rent has gone up, but pay has not.
Right, right.
Um, and so even thinking about that study, it connected to Oregon's Office of Economic Analysis that found here in Oregon that 54% of renters in the state do not have enough income left over for rent to cover basic living expenses. And I'm probably preaching to the choir
Yeah,
with that,
yeah.
right? And so, what I would say is that it is clear we are in a crisis, not only nationally, but definitely here locally in Eugene. And although, yes, there have been some new housing developments and even some green lighting of projects, especially in the area of middle housing, with some of those units having slighted for some affordable housing units. But the fact of the matter is that with some of those rental rates that currently are in existence, it's still unaffordable for most residents, or it's really a hardship, right, for those cost burden residents in our city who find themselves having to choose between paying rent or maintaining some basic necessities. And I am concerned, as someone who has done a lot of work with youth and families, are those families who have to choose between rent and providing childcare or even having food stability, or those who are elderly, right, who find themselves sometimes health compromised. And so they're also having to weigh, am I meeting my health needs this month or meeting the needs of providing housing and finding places to choose. And so some of the things that I put forth that's listed on the platform and things that I will definitely expand upon as we go through all these forums is that one, it is clear there needs to be a increase in city options when it comes to temporary shelters, warming centers, and transition homes. I mean, there were some closing of some of those shelters prior to the ice storm, and we saw that there was definitely a need for more in those spaces. And where we saw businesses, right, opening up space to meet the need. And I think as a city, at the end of the day, we are accountable for every resident, and we need to have a greater hand in ensuring that we're providing safety and security, especially when inclement weather is upon us. I would also like to think about expanding awareness of first-time ownership assistance, really to incentivize home ownership in Eugene. I believe that when people put roots down, you get longevity, you get greater stability. And so, really working with mortgage lenders to increase opportunities for more people to be able to access home ownership, and also local financial advising agencies who can provide, folks with education on home ownership in order to be prepared. I definitely prioritize funding for agencies and entities that provide housing and treatment concurrently to assist to address our houselessness crisis. And I also look to work with stakeholders, which includes, like I said, renters like myself, on how affordability is actually being defined in the city, to ensure that market rates for rental are not outpacing the median income of your current residents, right? Because that is definitely impacting more areas, right? It's causing food instability in our housing community. And so I'm also looking at, it was a question that was posed to me, about who's sitting on boards, who's sitting on those commissions. When you have 52% of Eugene's residents are renters, but it's not reflected in your city council, it's not reflected in the governance, it's often not reflected on who's sitting on those boards that are talking about housing, especially housing for renters when it's the homeowners that are leading the charge.
Right.
And so I think that needs to be definitely reflected. And the last thing I would add to that is I would want to develop additional community land trust options to protect affordable housing and ensure just some long-term housing stability.
The one thing I want to say, and this is tough because I don't even know where I stand on this, and it's a debate that it's so difficult to keep everybody on the same page, because we have such an issue with houselessness, and we have a lot of people that own a few properties, right? Like a couple properties where they rent to people, and that's their revenue source that feeds their family. So, and then with the phase 2 renter protections, which I'm sure you've read, because they are severe for Eugene. This is something that makes Eugene different than any place, almost, well, I don't know about anywhere in the country, but it sets it apart from many places in the country. And is that there's protections in place, like, for example, if you are evicted, no fault eviction, that's a very important distinction. If you are evicted at no fault of your own, the landlord is required to pay you in Eugene relocation fees, for example, and that's very expensive for a landlord. And I have had these conversations because I'm the producer of a podcast called Eugene Real Estate Podcast, and I've had these conversations on both sides of the fence because I've had, one of the guys on the podcast said people in Eugene are liberal until it gets to their curb. And then at that point, because like you're saying, there's a lot of people with a lot of money and it's vested interest, but there's really no question in there. I'm just saying that I'm aware of that. So with phase 2 protections, I guess quickly, and there's no way to answer this quickly, but quickly, you read that the phase 2 protections? Are you very familiar with it? And also, do you feel like that might be something that needs to be revisited, revised? Does it go too far? Where are you at with it? Because it's pretty extreme for a lot of people, the phase 2 protections. And I think there can be, I'm going to sound like a conservative here, but there can be counterintuitive repercussions from some of those policies because of how much it costs landlords that then want to pull out and not be part of it, and then they end up selling to corporations that make it an Airbnb. But anyway, that's a loaded question. Phase 2 protections. I didn't give you this question, so for everybody, I'm catching you a little off guard, but I know you're going to be prepared for it. So, what do you think?
Worries. I've had to talk about renters protection. So there's twofold. Let me also give you a little bit of background. So growing up back in Florida, where I'm originally from, my grandparents were property owners. My grandparents actually owned 4 houses side by side on the same block.
Nice.
My family still has 3 of them. By the time I was in high school, you never be aware of all the ins and outs of family business. But by the time I was in high school, I realized that my family grandparents had owned 5 rental properties and brick and mortar business. So I totally get it from both sides. I moved from a home to be a renter here, so I can definitely empathize on both sides, right? Because definitely there should be protections for land owners, property owners, as much as there's definitely a need for protections for those who are renters.
Right.
And how do you, like you said, it's like, how do you balance the nuance of meeting the need of both, where it's not a hardship if I am a property owner and want to be a property owner, right? Providing a clearly a necessary entity for
Right.
my community, but then also don't want to be then burdened by some financial hardship I was not prepared for.
Right.
I believe that I know that because we did get the endorsement from Eugene Tenant Alliance, is right there. They're definitely wanting to move into phase 3. Now that phase 1 and 2 has passed. Is there some space for reconsideration? I do believe so. There is that possibility to look at, right, how much of a burden that it is. And I think that's something to be up for consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just really navigating that
Yeah.
balance
Yeah.
between, right, making sure renters are being protected. Because I can also share, right, as a renter, I've benefited from some of those protections.
Which is
Um,
that's okay,
you
and that's
know,
okay because there's things. Things should benefit us at certain times. It's about a balance, like you said, nuance. Like some things we're gonna take a hit and have to make sacrifices for. Because I believe in a community effort. I believe in collectivism. So there's gonna be times where yeah, we could be here for days. But the phase 2 renter protections, for anybody unaware, should read them because it's really interesting and it's really difficult to navigate that balance. And I've done some really interesting podcasts on the Eugene Real Estate podcast and on my own, the Spent the Rent podcast, talking about that I recommend people check out. Let's real quickly talk about small business development. Eugene, you've got a lot of background in small business, independent business, entrepreneurship, that kind of stuff. Uh, what are some ways that the mayor is really a spokesperson and kind of a cheerleader for the all the different industry, all the different areas of production of community, and a big one is business development. You can try to bring jobs in and all that kind of stuff, but that's not always a great thing when you have these big companies with tax breaks that only last 5 years and all that kind of stuff. So what are some ways that the city can encourage small business development in Eugene with Eugene residents, people that are here?
yes. Thank you for that question. Love that. As someone who has been a small business owner and definitely support shopping local and doing procurement locally so that you have a vibrant, economic development and vitality of your businesses in your cities, because I truly believe that small businesses are the backbones of communities. And so your ability to thrive economically is really a huge part of it is dependent on how well those businesses, who are also right residents in your city, are able to thrive and flourish. One of the things that I consider in order to encourage more development and expand some development of existing businesses is looking at the processes that the city already has in place for permitting and licensing some businesses so that it can be simplified and streamlined. I'm all about removing barriers. And so, really being able to address what barriers may currently be in existence so that it is easier for entrepreneurs to navigate those regulatory requirements. And that may even require having like a dedicated support team to guide them through their process and expedite approvals. I mean, I remember when I first started a business, I went to other friends, I didn't necessarily go to my city to figure it out, but really having some other folks who were already had navigate those processes helped me to navigate to start, a new business. I think also looking at how a city can establish some procurement programs that actively support businesses that are owned by women, by our members of our LGBTQIA plus community, veterans and minorities, so that we can foster economic inclusion and diversity in our current local business landscape. Definitely believe in taking an equity approach to support the expansion and establishment of businesses through like business incubators and support programs. That was something that I saw in my community. Definitely, there were a lot of different programs really supporting business. A community college was creating incubators and cohorts, providing them not only with education, but also funding to help them expand and grow. And I would like to see more of that here. I know that there are definitely some programs that exist, but I'm going to be honest. Not a lot of people know about them. Sometimes as if you're only in a certain group or only in a group certain circle, you happen to be on a listserv, do you find out what actually is in existence? And I would like, as leading the charge in the city and being visible, is spreading greater awareness about what opportunities exist, what our Lane Community College is doing to help small business owners and help them be educated about the process and how they can grow and expand, and how even some of the work that the chamber is doing, and getting that more widespread. And everyone's not going to access everything, but at least creating a space, a
At least
hub,
it's available. Yeah.
um, so that is available and people know what they can access, and also look at what gaps exist and how as a city we can put forth what is needed so that budding entrepreneurs can see themselves existing here, and those who are current in business can continue to want to be here and continue to have the ability to expand. I would also advocate for strategic infrastructure investment, right, to support that economic growth. That includes our transportation networks. People need to be able to access businesses, that may be including upgrading some utilities and definitely investing in the technology infrastructure. Even with, there are some locations I've been to that definitely house servers, and some things need to be outdated. They're upgraded because they're outdated. There definitely needs more room and bandwidth, especially now that we know more people find themselves working remotely or companies are offering that. And so having that infrastructure would be key. I also feel like in the role of mayor, right, visibility is definitely key. And definitely being the voice that is encouraging residents and larger businesses to support our small local owned businesses and letting them see the benefits of shopping locally and creating incentives for local procurement. I think that's what's going to help businesses thrive and contribute to our economic vitality in Eugene.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. You had mentioned transportation, and I want to get to that at the kind of in a little bit, because we're going to mention a little bit more about kind of the River Road area and some of their battles with transportation. Before that, let's talk about something fun: the hospital closure. So the hospital closure shows us. I've been very vocal about this on the podcast. And let's be clear, you're running for this position. You haven't, you're not the incumbent, so this is not on you. But the hospital closure shows us how important it is for our leaders to be connected to the people. In many residents of Eugene's eyes, the previous administration has failed at that, and they have a very large network, like you had mentioned. In the short time since you've lived in Eugene, tell me some of the community members you've connected with, not necessarily by name, just like kind of who you've been able to bump elbows with, and what do you tell the critics that say that 3 years in Eugene is just not long enough to have established a large network?
So this is probably the one question that I'm like,
I know it's a little.
there's many ways to respond to the question. I want to first start off by saying that I believe in, when it comes to city government or government, period, right? I've been a public servant worker, so definitely impacted by, right, people above me making decisions. I would say that a person in government's personal network shouldn't be the sole reliance on if the city is running, if a project is able to thrive, is based on personal network. Because I think that there can be, in some ways, some ethical concerns about that, right?
Sure.
When you're like relying on just your personal
Yeah,
network
yeah, and it's
in
behind the
order
scenes.
to
Yeah, and it
make
becomes
something
behind the scenes at that point, and people want transparency. Yeah,
happen.
and I like
So I
that.
want that to be clearly
Perfect.
stated. And I
Yeah,
know that there are definitely some folks that right, have those ideas, right? Because some folks in office are definitely closer connected to those who are currently in political offices than others. And it also kind of shows in how certain decisions are being made. I
yeah.
say all of that to say that in my time being here, because I was going to ask, I was like, do you want to know my friends' names?
No, 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 no. And
What does that look like? But I will say this, in the time that I've been here, in 3 years, I know it's short. I didn't make the city charter. That's not a requirement except for a year. But I
Yep.
have definitely been able to make some connections to create access and opportunities for those in which I've served. I have spoken to judges and lawyers in this community. I have spoken to those who oversee transportation and create partnerships, even with programs such as entities like LTD. I've definitely been rooted and connected heavily in the arts and entertainment industry by definitely working with, Holt Center, your cultural services in the city of Eugene, JSMA. That's where I actually sit on the education committee there. Um, and so for me, that right includes the educational ecosystem here, from your everyday teacher, educational assistants, all the way to meeting with superintendents. In fact, because I worked overseeing a program that served the county, I actually got to go across
Yeah.
this large county,
Yeah.
meeting people and making some connections. I know folks who work in housing. I definitely know some folks who are working in behavioral health. And a lot of that was building relationships. I think that at the end of the day, regardless of my current, private, personal,
And yeah,
professional
I'll
network,
say something a
I
little bit.
yeah, I think that in order to connect, it's going to be someone who can build relationships, because it's going to take more than a current network
Right.
to
Right. No,
really
no.
tackle those issues. Um, and so for me, to speak about the 3 years, I came in with the mindset to serve. And that's literally what I did once I got, boots on the ground and literally unpacked, starting off working in the education system, serving. And part of that serving was I needed to connect with folks throughout the city, throughout the county, to bring in needs, to bring in some resources and really create partnerships. And for me, that was a lot of being visible, where I found myself being invited in a lot of different spaces with people who, were leading some businesses, major corporations, some small, budding entrepreneurs. And so I want to be representative of the whole conglomerate, right? And so I have been able to navigate those spaces. In the previous work that I was doing, one of my things that I always tutored, I never left a meeting with a no. And
Yeah.
it was to the benefit of those that I
Sure.
served. And I would like to be able to continue that and actually continue to expand that network. But I want to be clear that personal network shouldn't be the sole way, someone is able to thrive or be able
Necessarily
to
what I
get
meant. That's not necessarily what I really do appreciate that answer. It's amazing because and I think it's a fair question with something so sacred like your hometown. When you've lived in a town for so many years, there's a certain thing, and I think even past COVID, it's just tough. And so when there's a lot of people that are going to have a snap judgment, fair or not, that are going to be like 3 years, I don't know. And so I really do appreciate your answer on that one, and I respect it a lot. I had a similar question for the chief of the police department for Springfield. When he was coming on, that I was like, well, you're new to the area. What do you know about Springfield? Because obviously you get briefed. This for mayor, it's an executive position. So, it's not like I think it's unfair if I didn't ask it, but I didn't mean it as a who's your personal friends? Because if that was my thing, I would automatically be disqualified. No, but no, I'm just kidding. So then now running for mayor, I'd imagine gives you a great opportunity to bump elbows with community members you'd like to represent. And in a year with no incumbent, I commend you on stepping up. This is a tough city with some large obstacles that it's facing. This is the hardest question that I've asked all three candidates. In the River Road area, we have had now multiple recalls over issues that started over a bus line. We've had a city councilor removed from office. We've had a group of citizens who feel unheard. What do you tell voters who you may disagree with on policy decisions? And I'll ask the question again, but I really want to emphasize that this was over an MX line that wanted to go in. This is where it started. And the fact that, there's certain things that happen that data shows that have to happen so that a town can function, that people are unwilling to accept. Like the fact that traffic will get so out of control that if you don't put in a mass transit line to take even a percentage of the people out of individual cars, then it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And people just refuse to accept it. Now, that being said, the city went ahead and went through with plans to continue a max line or an MX line, and the city councilor that voted it in with going against what the people wanted essentially was removed from office, as you were aware. And so, you know, it's really major and it just isn't changing. And I don't think anything in Eugene's changed. What I've learned is when you recall someone, you're going to get someone, if you feel like you're on the opposite side of an extremist narrative in a town like Eugene, which would be liberal, then those people in the River Road, which I don't agree with them politically, but I'm just saying those people, I don't like when people feel unheard, regardless of who it is, you know? So I want to make sure that they feel heard at some point. And so when they don't get heard at all, and it just continues to be the same thing, nothing changes. So what do you tell voters who may disagree with you on policy decisions?
Mhm. So I would say that I can understand, right? That feeling of being unheard. A part of me, my why and running is that it's as someone who's done a lot of work with equity, someone who's worked with a lot of marginalized community, whether it's because of previous incarceration or because of race, ethnicity, linguistic, or having different abilities. As someone who understands equity, I'm always looking at who's not at the table. And what I have heard in my time being here and navigating many different spaces on a variety of topics that really ultimately are talking about access is, what are we doing to ensure that people are being heard? What are we doing to ensure that what they are saying, what are they expressing, is actually taken into consideration? Because it's not just good enough to listen, but then when you take no action, right? Or reflect that you showed considerable efforts to consider what they have presented. And I am running to represent those folks who felt like city council is not listening to me. They're not considering what I'm saying. They're not making decisions on topics that even matter to me, matters most, to a lot of folks. And so there are a remnant of folks, right, that feel like they're not being represented, they're not being heard by what is taking place right currently. And so I am running and with the goal of representing the interests of all constituents, and govern with integrity, transparency, and inclusivity. Those things are key to me. I'm all about transparency and I'm all about being held accountable. Anyone who's worked with me know that I'm going to hold them accountable. That's key for me. And so when voters, right, disagree, and I get it, because in an ideal world, everyone would get everything that they want all the time.
Right. You get a car.
But
You get
again,
a
that's
car.
the ideal world, and that's
Right.
just unfortunately not the reality of our society. There has to be some compromise, and hope is that there's compromise and not, right, just going completely divergent, that a group of folks are feeling annexed from processes that they really should be involved in. I would emphasize the importance of engaging in respectful dialogue and encourage folks to continue to have, open mindedness. I express an appreciation for folks' engagement and encourage them to share their perspectives, because I know that having diverse viewpoints enrich our ability to understand complex issues. Everything in the city can be very complex because, right, there's so many things that overlap. I would also highlight the fact that, we may not agree on every policy, but my decisions would surely be guided on my commitment to doing what is in the best interest of the community and really creating a positive change for all residents, not just, a few, or where, depending on where you live. I want to ensure them and would ensure them that their voice matters, and that I'm always going to be willing to listen and learn and work together in order to find common ground and solutions. And so I want to just hamper on that point, because I believe that as elected official, right? You'll hear me say it again. Visibility is important, and guess what? Everyone's not showing up to City Hall. It doesn't mean that they should not be heard.
Right.
One of the things that I was known for is I wasn't waiting on people to come to the institution agency where I was working. I was going out. I was going to their homes, I was going to those meetings, I was going into the community to hear from people, not waiting for them to call me, not waiting on them to, send an email. I went to where they are. And I would love to see more of that happen, because I feel that when there are times that some, even when it comes to a public hearing, you may not find out about it till the very last minute, or you may not have heard about it
Sure.
at all. You got to be on a listserv,
Yeah.
to learn about this issue. And I'm like, there has to be a better way that we can increase community engagement. And again, it goes back to accessibility. Everyone's not going to pull up, drive, dinner time to
Yeah.
go sit in City Hall for a few hours. It doesn't mean, though, that they should not be able to actively engage with the people who have been elected to represent them, or that they don't get a voice at the table. We got to create more options and opportunities for people to give input, but that
Yeah.
also comes with the transparency of being more transparent about the issues and what things that are being voted on. Are we using every mechanism possible? Because everyone is not going to be on Facebook, everyone is not going to walk to your city hall, but it doesn't mean that they should not be informed about the topics and the issues that are going to be considered. So that is a big push for me when it comes to representing folks, and but also in how we engage. I'm all about listening and learning. I believe in being coming from a servant mindset, and so in order to serve you, I got to hear from you. I got
Yeah.
to know what it is that you need in order to be vocal to represent you.
It's just tough because I've always been such a huge supporter of public transportation. So I'm like, I just don't understand because I've seen the benefits. I went without driving. I've been very vocal on the podcast that I'm 8 years sober from alcohol, and that I went with years without getting a license because I knew that that was going to be something that would put me in a dangerous position. So I chose not to get my license because I chose to be a night owl, for those years of my life. And I saw a lot of times on public transit how much it could benefit so many different types of people, not just people that are disabled, that, just, but just everyone in every way. And and you bump elbows with people in public transit, you get such a better sense of what community really matters and what it means. Like, so I don't know. I just wish people would understand that local government is not the devil. We have to balance our budgets. I mean, that's the thing. It's the national problem that we have with, we don't need to get into that because we'll fall, yeah. Someone will fall asleep and they're probably on the top of the ticket. Anyway, where do people get involved with your campaign? I have it right there on the screen, Shanaé4Eugene.com.
Yes.
There's a lot of cool information, your whole platform. I'm so unprofessional the way that I ask these questions, but I do appreciate you coming on and doing this. But yeah, one last question, and then we'll get out of here. What would you like to tell every resident of Eugene who's voting this May? And before you answer, I want to drill this home that if either you or Karin gets 50% of the vote, it is now a two-person race. In May, the election's over, so there will not be a runoff. And so this is why primaries are so important. And folks, gives you a reason to vote because we're getting screwed out of a primary on the national stuff. Yeah, I'm no love going to the National Democratic Party. I'll say that. The DPLC is great. The Democratic Party of Lane County, sure, they get my kudos, but the Democratic National Party, they can kick rocks. And the Republicans don't even get me started. That's a circus. So anyway, before we get out of here, what would you like to tell every resident of Eugene who is voting this May?
So, what I would like to say to everyone in the city, first and foremost, because I was a civics educator, I need you to vote. It is so important that you are engaged and that you are involved in what is happening locally. National politics, they definitely overtake all of our media. In most spaces. And so, we're often not hearing all the time about what is happening locally. And so I know that what happens locally impacts us the most, impacts us even more so directly. And so I believe that your voice is connected to your vote. And so I do want to first encourage everyone to get out and vote. If you know someone who is not registered to vote, help them through that process. and to get them prepared to vote. If you have some kids who are, going to be first time voters, now is the time to have those conversations. So I'll start off there. Secondly, yes, of course, I would want you to vote for me. And what I would say, as we are, getting closer to election day, May 21st, 2024, is that I want people to make informed decisions. I want you to consider all of your options. I believe there's two more people who also have joined the race. I don't know if they're officially or not, but nonetheless, I think that, I want people to give my platform a consideration. I'm here to represent all people, not just a certain segment, not such as only a certain section of the community. It is here because I'm here because I believe progress is possible for everyone. There's no reason that anyone in our city does not have the opportunity, the chance to not just survive, but be able to thrive. And it's going to take collaborative work, collaborative effort in order to do that. It's going to take that collective impact model by working across many sectors to do it. And we have the ability to make that change. In order to change what is happening with city council and will also be the new city hall, is going to have to change some of the faces and people who are in those seats. And so I hope that people would give me the consideration. I have the will, I have the desire, I have the passion for this city. Made Eugene my home. I love being here, have made great connections here, have been able to create great opportunities here. And I want people to not be, how can I say this, subject to misinformation. I want people to
Good
do
luck.
their own research and
Yeah.
ask questions. One of the things that I love about our website, we give you the option to check and let us know, what issues matter to
Yeah.
you. It gives you the option to directly email. I see every email, can speak for anyone else, but I read every email that comes. I respond to everything that's sent to us and sent to through that website. And so that is the type of leadership you will have, is someone who is seeking your thoughts, seeking your opinion, not telling you what you need to do, not telling you what we're going to do, but actively engaging with you, listening to you, learning from you in order to be a better leader on your behalf. And so that is what I'm presenting, because I want to move Eugene forward. We have to move forward in order for our city to not only grow, but also to sustain, and also to leave a city that the next generation, because people know me, youth are my heart, that the next generation will not be phased out because they can't afford to live here unless they're still living home with their parents, or they are not able to establish a business here because the resources aren't available to them, or they're not able to have a living wage job because those opportunities have been phased out. I want to ensure that whether you're young or young at heart, that in this city, regardless of what you look like, believe in, orientation, or circumstance, that Eugene is a city for you. And part of that is going to require a shift in who's leading the charge and who is representing you at City Hall. And I hope that you choose me.
Yeah. Okay. There you have it. Shanaé Joy Stringer for you. Shanaé for Eugene.com is the website. You can donate. You can read more about her platform. If you'd like to support my podcast, you can go to strpod.com. That's strpod.com. I would really appreciate it if you became a monthly sponsor. That can help me get the word out about this. I do this because I think that there is a void where there needs to be coverage like this. And if people don't like the way that I do it, then they can start their own damn podcast. And I really encourage them to do that, because then I'll talk trash about them and they can talk trash about me. And then we can be guests on each other's show and we can start a fake rivalry and it'll be awesome. It'll be really cool. No, I really do appreciate chatting with you. And I look forward to getting to know you better if you do win this seat. Even if you don't, I know that this is not the end for you. I know it's taboo to talk about, but this gives you such a great chance to be able to meet so many people in the community that you are going to be a face that's going to make a huge difference in our community. And for that, I'm going to thank you ahead of time. And I appreciate, I'm sure that what I love is I get to become friends with all the people that are trying to run for these seats. And like you had said about, it's not about personal stuff, but that's what Eugene is. And that's why it's guarded. is because it's like, I want to be guarded because it's like a family once you get in, and it is a small town. And so it's like, once you're a part of it, then you're a family, you know, but people got to be careful because there's a lot of people that want to poop on stuff in Eugene, as you are aware. It's very true. It's true. It's true. I hate to say it. There's something that has to happen. My coworker is dealing with a dude that just, he's talking to his landlord about this, but there's a guy that just wants to desecrate his entire house all the time, every single day. And it's all over Eugene, and everyone has stories like this. And so you're going to have your hands full if you win this seat. But thank you so much. We're going to get out of here. Yeah, you are welcome. Thank you for listening to the Spent the Rent podcast. You can listen to all previous episodes at my website. Please donate to the show to help it grow, strpod.com.